I tamed the menstrual migraine beast. Welcome everybody, this is Adrienne with Yoga for Migraine, and I'm here to talk about how I tamed my menstrual migraine beast. We will be talking about periods. If you're squeamish, maybe listen or read about it. But yeah, we're going to talk about periods. We're going to talk about migraine. Break the stigma, right? If you're just joining me for the first time, I come live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 Pacific, to share talks about wellness and migraine, to share free yoga videos. And if you're joining me live, hello. Say hello in the comments, add hashtag live or hashtag replay, depending on when you're seeing this. It's great to see who's joining me for these talks. But I will talk about what I'm doing now to help with my menstrual migraine. That really was the first type of migraine that I identified back in my early days of migraine. Like the menstrual period migraine was always the main one. Then as I got more chronic and things started picking up, I'd start having migraine at other times. But then my menstrual migraine got even more intense. And so menstrual migraine's always been my most stubborn, difficult to treat, just most intense. But I'm at the point in my life now where really, for the most part, my menstrual migraine is kind of like my main one that I get now, and I don't have very many others. And when I do have the menstrual migraine week, it's a lot better than it used to be. So I'm going to share what I've done to get there, all the zillions of things I've tried, ranging from many types of birth control and triptans and the whole mix, and talk about how you can also use lifestyle shifts during your period to help you navigate that time. I would say too, as I've raised my migraine threshold with yoga, with mindfulness, with pain reprocessing therapy, which is something that I teach all of my clients in how to do in Beyond Migraine, as my whole resilience to migraine has increased, my menstrual migraines kind of like come along with it and gotten better as well. It's like I've raised all the boats as things got better. If you are someone who lives with menstrual migraines, say hello in the comments, because you know what? 2 out of 3 women with migraine have more severe symptoms during their period, and people, can be shy to talk about it, but let's not be. Let's talk about migraine. Let's talk about what goes on during this time of the month. That for me, when I was in the height of chronic migraine, it was legit debilitating. I mean, it just felt like you had a whole week of your life, like where you were just flat out. And yeah, to get through, working each day, I was just kind of drugged up every single day to manage it. That said, I do feel like that is a legitimate path of doing these kind of mini prevention periods of drugs during your period. So we'll get into that. Let's talk about I'm going to go for like the good stuff right away of what I'm doing now that helps me through my menstrual migraine. Good timing, because I'm experiencing this all right now and I can really be very specific about what's going on. But I do feel like when you raise your migraine threshold through lifestyle, through all the things I've mentioned, that it's also going to diminish the intensity of menstrual migraine when you do get it. I think for me, menstrual migraine is going to be something that I'm still going to deal with for a while, but I'm here to teach you how to make it more manageable. It's really one of like the last remaining migraine days that I still have, and it's okay. And I've learned how to make it easier. So let's talk about how you can make it easier. One tip that sounds obvious, but kind of took me a while to figure out, is you got to plot your period on your calendar. I'm all about Google Calendar. Everything in my life goes there. So you got to put that on your calendar And the thing that was a newer realization is that I started plotting my projected future first day of my period. So when I first get my first day of my period, okay, it goes in my calendar. And then thankfully my periods are quite regular. Then I put in my calendar my projected 4 weeks later first day of my period. Why? So that I can kind of prepare for that week. This idea comes from the approach called hormonal syncing. Look it up, Google it. It's really exciting and promising, but it's the idea of adjusting your life depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle. And you can get really granular with it, like, the 4 phases of your cycle. This phase, you're more active. You might even eat certain things, and then the week of your period of your menstrual cycle, you're gonna adjust your activity. So I don't get super granular with it, but I would say the week right before, a few days before my period, I know that I am going to avoid scheduling major life events that week. I would not schedule travel that week if I could help it, or in major talks or work or life things. So when you have that projected date already in your calendar, then you're going to be able to make adjustments because you see that it's there and you're like, okay, this is my week, I'm going to tone it down. You're going to allow yourself more rest that week. And know that that's part of the deal. Like, this is your time for rest. Traditionally, in many cultures, when a woman was on her period, like, they could kind of go off to a different tent and were even separated from the rest of the tribe. And so in many ways, this is a natural part of our cycle. Our modern world isn't built on cycles. It's very linear and the same every day. But women are cyclical, nature is cyclical, and so I think the more that we work with our cycle instead of fight against it, the more success we will have in feeling healthy and feeling good. So the week of your cycle, you're gonna rest more, you're gonna take more breaks, you're gonna sleep more, you're gonna probably not do a lot of big activities if you can help it. And give yourself that space to rest and not push yourself, because when you push yourself, you're in pain, like it's going to intensify your symptoms. So those so far are my big tips. Plot your period on your calendar, plot your projected period start date, and then the week of your period, scale back your activities, even physical activities. This is the week for restorative yoga, for, walks, of just taking what you're capable of and turning it down a notch physically. Some other tips that have been helpful for me in terms of the pharmaceutical end of things. I have tried numerous types of birth control to help with my menstrual migraine, and actually birth control pills were really the first preventative I've attempted for migraine, because my migraine really was so linked to my cycle. So in doing that, though, this is not medical advice. I'm just sharing what I've done. Talk to your doctor, all that good stuff. But I've tried so many different types of birth control to finally arrive at where I'm at now, where I am on the Mirena IUD. It's a progesterone only IUD. And for me personally, this has been the most effective because it has greatly reduced the length of my period and the flow. So my period kind of is a little blip. It's not a huge part of each month like it used to be. And I seem to tolerate the progesterone only birth control better than the estrogen only. So that's kind of all going on in the background. Mirena IUD. I'll also talk in a little bit about other types of birth control I've tried. But I feel like the hormonal, pharmaceutical element of this is so personal, and different women react differently to different hormones, progesterone, estrogen, and each person has different health circumstances, right? Some women, like estrogen, might increase the likelihood of stroke if you have migraine, or maybe, there's a history of breast cancer in your family. So all of those things are very individualistic. You got to talk to your doctor. For me, the Mirena IUD seems to be the best fit for me, and to help me pinpoint if progesterone only birth control would be helpful before launching into an IUD, because that's kind of a significant commitment in your body. I did try progesterone only pills at first to see how my body would react, so you could kind of test these things out before you invest fully in an IUD. Finally, during the week of my period, I give myself that grace as well to use more medication. Typically, I'm at the point in my migraine life where I use my Cephally every day, and I have one triptan. I don't have any other preventives anymore that I am taking. But yes, during the week of my period, I find that having that grace to be like, yeah, I'm going to take some more meds this week, is an effective way not only to handle the attacks when they do come that week, but to prevent them. And so what takes a lot for my head to wrap around, and many other of my clients too, is actually using triptans and anti-inflammatories like naproxen as a preventative for your period, to pre-treat with triptans, which sounds so like, what? I'm going to take a triptan before I actually have an attack? That feels so wrong. People with migraine, we're all been so indoctrinated, like, don't take triptans unless you need it because you don't want to get into rebound and blah, blah, blah. So what I can say is that it is a very common recommendation by doctors is, and check with your doctor before you just, launch into what I'm saying. But, you can see this on the American Migraine Foundation website, which is what I'm looking at now. And this is something that's been recommended to me by my doctors, is to a couple days before your expected period, is you actually do start pre-treating with naproxen. You can take it twice daily and check in with your digestion, take it with food. It can impact your digestion for certain people, and some people shouldn't take anti-inflammatories for other health reasons. But that's kind of like a core approach that you can kind of take for a limited week. More naproxen, more anti-inflammatory, and that can help bring down the intensity of the menstrual migraine. Along with that, another recommended approach that I've done as well is to almost like pre-treat with triptans that week. Okay, now again, if you're just joining me, that sounds scary. Like, what? I'm advocating triptans before you even have an attack. What about rebound? So my doctors have told me that the risk of medication overuse, rebound, there's all these terminologies, but basically the idea of, if you take more than 9-10 triptans a month, you're more likely to exacerbate and make your migraine days more frequent. What my doctors have told me is that if you are using the triptans for a short period of time, say a week, but more, frequent during that 1 week, that does not pose as great a risk as using multiple triptans for multiple weeks. Okay, so to sum up again, if you're using, 3-4 triptans in 1 week, and it's condensed, my doctors have told me that does not pose as big of a risk for rebound than if you're taking that week after week after week. So that kind of helps me, put it all in perspective, not feel like, oh no, I have to like cut back on my triptans if I need it during my period, because I'm worried about rebound. It's like, no, like I need it this week. I'm going to allow myself to take care of it. That said, the idea of pre-treating your menstrual migraine before you even have an attack during your period is kind of like mind-blowing, and takes like some some mental gymnastics, right? But you can look it up. It's a standard recommendation by doctors. Talk with your doctor. But pre-treating with longer acting triptans, like I use naratriptan. It's the longest half-life of any triptan that isn't found in generic form. The longest acting triptan, highest half-life, is frovatriptan. And that is something I did try for a time when I was chronic migraine and my menstrual migraine was super debilitating. Frovatriptan's half-life, I think, is like a few days. And it's specifically recommended for menstrual migraine because it's so long-lasting. But it is really expensive, especially if your insurance plan, doesn't like to cover non-generics. I'd have to look it up, but it's hundreds of dollars when I did it years ago. And I even like chose at that time when I was full out chronic migraine to like pay for a more expensive health insurance plan so I would be able to get the coverage for these like higher, more expensive medications. So there was a time, when I attempted all of these things, but I do feel like now I don't need all of that. I don't need all the expensive medication and so much, because my migraine threshold overall is so much higher. And so when I do have my menstrual migraine, it is not close at all to the intensity that it used to be, and like the debilitating, just like out of commission feeling that I used to have. So you can kind of adjust, though, the week of your period. Perhaps if talking to your doctor, doing the naproxen daily is a good step. Perhaps adding a triptan. And I even have been experimenting just this week of actually genuinely using a triptan at night, so I'm not experiencing as much of the side effects like right before bed, so that I don't just get the attack that I know I'm gonna get anyway. And let's like not experience the pain. Let's maybe address it before it happens. If you know it's gonna happen anyway, we know most of us can feel when it's imminent, like you're tired, you're cranky, you have that prodrome, that you can know that probably you're going to get a migraine attack. So that said, that's kind of my newest experiment right now, is pre-treating a little bit more with triptans and resting more, even taking half a triptan. These are things that I'm doing that are commonly recommended by doctors. But again, let me remind you, talk with your doctor and find out what is the best approach for you to help you get through the week with minimal disability, knowing that, like you do need to slow down the week of your period. You do need to rest more. You do need to take care of yourself and do less activity. Yoga wise, I love restorative yoga during the week of my period with my comfy blankets and bolsters and just resting in very gentle, relaxing poses, but not like a ton of physical activity during this week. So that is what I'm doing now. And if you are struggling with menstrual migraine, please add your questions in the comments. I am happy to share my experience, and I've gone through so many stages of trying to resolve this, and thankfully it is at the best point it's been in a while. But let's talk about what happened when I was first, trying to, solve this menstrual migraine crisis and figure out what to do. And so I mentioned that one of the first things I did was trying the birth control pill, the standard estrogen based one. And I had, talked to some girlfriend who's like, yeah, I just take all the estrogen pills. I don't take the placebos. I don't even have a period anymore. Like, that sounds good. If I didn't have a period, maybe I wouldn't get menstrual migraine. So that was the first thing I tried back in the day. But unfortunately for me, for whatever reason, that made my migraine worse. And I gave it a shot. I, was on the estrogen only, even though supposedly didn't have my period. But for whatever reason, with my sensitivity to estrogen, I got an increase of migraine attacks. The idea with menstrual migraine is that right before your period, there's this big drop of estrogen, and that is what is thought to bring on the migraine attacks. But I feel like hormonal hormones are such a mysterious thing that could still use much more research. Most women's diseases have generally not gotten very good research behind them, and so does take some trial and error to really find the best thing. But I've also tried, after kind of this debacle with trying the pill every day and like getting worse symptoms, I was very nervous about like estrogen forms of birth control. And then I did attempt to do just a copper IUD. And that was kind of like my next solution that I was going to try. The copper IUD is not hormonal at all. And so I was like, hey, maybe that'll help. So for me, the copper IUD was not very helpful because it lengthened my period. And generally people with the copper IUD do have longer periods with more flow. And although I wasn't messing with my hormones, I think having that like longer, heavier period was not beneficial for me. So that was the other thing that I was like, tried that for a while, years, until I switched to what I'm doing now. Mirena, IUD, progesterone only. That for me has helped. But remember to check with your doctor. It's also personal, it's also individual. But interestingly, many people with menstrual migraine, when they are going through pregnancy, do have an amazing relief from migraine attacks. And for the most part, that is what happened with me as well. I've had 2 children, and during my second pregnancy, I would say that is when my migraine overall was worse. I almost didn't have my second daughter because I was like in the thick of chronic migraine, and I couldn't fathom how I was going to get through pregnancy without all my migraine meds, which you're not supposed to take when you're pregnant. And it really, that was probably the worst migraine moment of my life, like trying to figure out, can we have another kid? But I got the Cephali, that helped me get on the right track, where I got to the point where like, okay, I think I can, suffer through like the possibility of not being able to take meds during pregnancy. So I'll talk about my second pregnancy because that's when my migraine was at its worst. First trimester for me was really rough, and that's very typical as well for many women. That's when hormonal, estrogen is like kind of still changing a lot. And migraine pretty much like ruined one of me and my husband's anniversary trips. Pregnant, vomiting, migraine, travel, and it was really bad. I couldn't take anything, and I was quite miserable for that first trimester. The one things that I really could do to treat at that point was like Tylenol and occasional caffeine, which again, like typically women, oh, you're supposed to cut back on the caffeine. For me, I actually increased during that pregnancy because I didn't have many other options. So finally, though, like second and third trimesters, it was like, yes, my belly's getting big, I'm tired, but the migraine symptoms really subsided. And that is very common for many women with menstrual migraine. However, not all. And so, yeah, I definitely had that fear going in. I'm like, what if I'm the one of the few women who gets it worse? And it worked out, made through the first trimester, which was tough, and then had a really nice reprieve. Interestingly, had a nice reprieve all through breastfeeding from migraine as well. But when I stopped breastfeeding with my second daughter, the migraine attacks came back. And again, all interesting, all these hormonal changes, right? When I stopped breastfeeding, for me, it was a very clear, like, market, okay, now I have migraine again, right? Now, I've relapsed back to how I was and had to catch back up on all my self-care and everything like that. So the hormonal mysteries of women are quite fascinating. They're very individual, but there are things that we can do during our period to feel better. And especially, it is one of the few migraine attacks that we can predict for so many of us, that we know it's going to happen, and that we can plan for it. Not all migraine attacks are like that. Most of them aren't, which makes migraine really difficult. But with menstrual migraine, if you can get to the place where you're working on raising your migraine threshold anyway, right? You're doing all the lifestyle things, you're working on decreasing your fear of migraine, which is all the things that we teach my clients in Beyond Migraine. You're building up your healthy routines, daily routines. My clients have a daily 30-minute yoga practice. We are resting. We're working on our sleep hygiene. Like, all of those stress reduction strategies are in place. That's going to help overall. Plus, during the week of your period, if you can give yourself that grace, that acceptance that you possibly are going to need to take more medication than normal that week, and even just plan for it and talk with your doctor about using some anti-inflammatories plus long-lasting triptans during that week for a mini preventive period. It's not going to be permanent, but that during that week, maybe look into pre-treating before you actually get the migraine attacks. And rest during that week. Know that you're going to be cranky perhaps and more sensitive, and give yourself some time to kind of cocoon inward, have that sense of protection of yourself, of being cozy, of being relaxed, of having less activity. So we need those cycles in our lives. We need those cycles of activity and then also rest. And the week of your period is the time to up your self-care and up your rest. Probably for most of us, if you deal with menstrual migraine, upping your medication and letting yourself ride it out. If you need help, if you have questions on menstrual migraine, I talked a lot, and hopefully you'll find lots in this video, but absolutely reach out and DM me or post in the comments about anything else maybe that has worked for you or you still have questions about. We have a lot of great new clients joining Beyond Migraine right now who are committing to cutting their migraine days by half. I have a lot of wonderful clients who are just graduating from the program and have cut down their migraine days by half to 2/3. It's really exciting to kind of have both new folks and graduating folks coalesce right now and inspire each other. And I hope that this inspires you to take good care of yourself and have some hope and agency over migraine. So lots of love to you guys. Next week I'll be bringing you a yoga class to help pick up your energy as we come into spring here in the Northern Hemisphere. Thank you guys for watching. Bye-bye.